Orleans was a city with a motto that no one could forget. The Big Easy had a ring to it that rang ever so true. This past week, the city that boasted the ability to delight every sense under the sun became a place that overpowered the senses in ways few could ever have imagined. Last Sunday, we began our coverage of Hurricane Katrina from downtown New Orleans, describing a city on edge.
As of right now, New Orleans is definitely the target for this hurricane.
As dire as it sounded, little did we know it would get so much worse. There would be the storm, and then the storm that followed. Within hours, we found ourselves hunkered down in the New Orleans Superdome, the shelter of last resort, the city called it, and that it certainly was.
I'm very grateful for this Superdome, because without it, I don't know where we would have went.
By dawn on Monday, as Katrina roared ashore, she had already robbed the evacuees of power, water, and air conditioning. Sanity would be next. The 9,000 unfortunate souls inside watched as what they hoped would protect them came crashing in on them instead.
Scared everybody, scared me.
Alex Anderson thought he'd be safe here. Turned out, really no place in New Orleans was. Little did the city know then just how scary it was about to become. By early Tuesday morning, the damage was devastating. Katrina had dealt a blow like few other storms in history, certainly none in this country for a long, long time.
I've been through many different tropical storms, but never nothing this intense.
The stranded numbered in the tens of thousands. The dead, we still don't know. A city and a nation that thought it was prepared for a disaster of this magnitude found themselves woefully outmatched in almost every way. New Orleans had become an island of desperation, and so far, the only people helping out were those about to lose their homes too. 80% of the city's fire and police ended up homeless as well.
This area is completely underwater. I'm looking at about 5 feet of water everywhere we look.
The news only got worse. The levees that held through the storm would hold no more, and that's when pain turned to panic. The run on food began. Legitimate looting, some called it. Diapers, bottled water, snack foods were the first thing to go.
People got to do something. They ain't got no more food.
Even the police understood that.
I can't say you're welcome to it, but you got to do what you got to do to survive.
But the temptation proved too much, and suddenly, the water wasn't the only worry.
Hey, I get my drop it. Hey, stupid, drop it.
Law and order was gone, along with everything else.
Where'd you get that?
Winn-Dixie.
They give it to you, you take it.
They're giving it away. You got to go to Winn-Dixie.
They're giving it away.
Yeah.
Frustration was at a breaking point. Back at the Superdome, as fast as the crowds were growing in size, the mood was growing ugly. More than 20,000 had waded waist-deep through the filth to get here. The stench reached for miles, all the way up to the top of this freeway overpass, where we found some evacuees who were even more unlucky.
Help us!
These were the people who never made it to the dome. They were living on the interstate. No food, no water, no sanitation. On this highway to hell, we found a woman about to give birth. We found another woman near death.
So what do you think's going to happen to your mom?
Probably die, don't you think?
And we found a man who brought death on himself after leaping over the railing.
I'm going home. It's got to be better than this. It's got to be. And I'm going to take that chance because I'm going.
Few scenes were more telling than that. For those still trapped in this beleaguered city, they had indeed lost their hope. The federal response to this disaster in no way matched its scope. The plan, if there was one, had failed. And no place proved that better than in the city's hospital district. Although an evacuation had been ordered hours before Katrina hit, only the most critically ill made it out in time. The rest were stuck, some 2,000 by some doctors' estimates, and if they weren't critical before the storm, They certainly were now. We found Dr. Alan Maughan stranded on the ramp to his emergency room that now looked more like a boat dock.
We've got a number of patients still on ventilators. We've got patients that need dialysis.
We even found a patient floating in the water, his hospital gown still on.
Ready? 1, 2, 3.
We pulled him into our boat because there was simply no one else to do it. Not according to Mike Brown, though, the director of FEMA. He said the pace of the relief effort was acceptable.
The American people need to understand is that the full force of the federal government is bringing all of those supplies in an unprecedented effort.
That certainly didn't square with New Orleans Mayor Ray Nagin. He was sick of all the promises for help and finally lost it during an interview on the radio.
I don't want to see anybody do any more goddamn press conferences. Put a moratorium on press conferences. Don't do another press conference until the resources are in this city. Now get off your asses and let's do something, and let's fix the biggest goddamn crisis in the history of this country.
As one of the evacuees put it, that's the first time I've ever heard a politician swear on the air and the voters were actually for it. The next day, not only did President Bush come to New Orleans, but so did the National Guard.
You know, I'm going to fly out of here in a minute, but I want you to know that I'm not going to forget what I've seen.
What most people wished had been here a day after the storm finally made it. The water, the food, the security, and the sense that the rest of the nation really did care.
When I saw the National Guard that arrived today, I felt like once again I was a part of America. Because I really felt like my country had deserted me until then.
And for the first time in a long while, there were big smiles in the Big Easy. Louis Armstrong would have been proud. The airport named after him became a haze of helicopters, ferrying in the sick and the stranded. Baggage carts became stretchers. The terminal, a makeshift ER. It didn't solve the problem. All it really did was move it. Thousands are still stranded here with no place to go. But by the end of the week, the efforts to save them weren't only riding on the backs of those who lived here. Finally, those who hadn't lost everything were pitching in too.
Thank you.
A welcome change for the tired and poor of New Orleans who haven't stopped asking why it took so long.
It was a preposterous, reckless place to build a city on a snaky bend in the Mississippi River between Lake Pontchartrain and the Gulf of Mexico. From the very beginning, New Orleans knowingly, defiantly tempted fate. Why? Because of the river. It was always all about the river. A French aristocrat, Jean-Baptiste Lemoine, Sieur de Bienville, founded La Nouvelle-Orléans in 1718 against the advice of his engineers. In its first 4 years of existence, it was wiped out 4 times by hurricanes. Spain got New Orleans as a prize of war in 1763. Napoleon took it back for France in 1800, but in 1803 turned around and sold the entire Louisiana colony, New Orleans and all, to the brand new United States for $15 million in the Louisiana Purchase. Destiny arrived in New Orleans with the first steamboat in 1812. The population in 1820 was 25,000. By 1840, it had quadrupled to 102,000. About then, both blacks and whites in this flamboyant, eccentric boomtown began celebrating Mardi Gras in the streets. There were so many different nationalities. There was so much racial blurring. It was human gumbo.
So I like to say to people that my family has been in New Orleans longer than the American flag has flown over the city.
Former New Orleans Mayor Marc Morial's ancestors arrived as Creole-speaking free blacks from Haiti.
Hello.
His father, Ernest Dutch Morial, was mayor too, the city's first black elected to the post.
New Orleans is a city of attitude and edge. It's a city of sweetness, spiciness, and stubbornness. It's a city with its own personality, and the sweetness, the spiciness, and the stubbornness give us our soul.
His description sounds like the city's famous food. You could have been fooled watching New Orleans eat and celebrate and play the music it invented, jazz. Fooled into thinking it was a city where the good times always rolled. But twice it burned down. There have been terrible yellow fever, typhus, and cholera epidemics, not to mention floods and hurricanes like Betsy in 1965.
And my grandfather and my uncles had to literally barricade a door and nail it shut with a large 2x4. And I have a vivid memory of the power of this storm and having been displaced from our home, which probably got about a foot or two of water in it.
The Big Easy has always concealed its uneasiness, preferred to put on its party face. But consider this quotation from mystery writer Chris Wiltz. The past is written all over the face of the future in New Orleans, and darkness seethes beneath the atmosphere of bonhomie. Especially where race is concerned. After the Civil War, after Reconstruction, New Orleans became what it never was before, a segregated city, racially and economically. Plessy versus Ferguson, the 1896 Supreme Court ruling that legalized segregation, was a New Orleans case. Homer Plessy was arrested and prosecuted after refusing to give up his seat in a whites-only train car. The small group of white power brokers who ran New Orleans ruthlessly protected their self-interest. The classic example, their calculated treachery during the flood of 1927.
People were killed from Virginia to Oklahoma, all of which part of the Mississippi River system. Nearly 700,000 people were fed by the Red Cross. The overwhelming majority of those were in Arkansas, Mississippi, and Louisiana.
John M. Barry is the author of The Rising Tide, about the 1927 flood.
Largely to reassure the financial interests elsewhere in the country that New Orleans had the power to protect itself, that it would never be threatened by the Mississippi River, the powers that be in New Orleans made a decision that they would dynamite the levee outside the city,
flooding outlying areas instead. They promised to pay for any harm done, but never did, leaving an estimated 14,000 people homeless. If the stakes were that high then, think about now. Which brings us to the aftermath of Katrina and whether New Orleans can or even should be rebuilt.
New Orleans must be rebuilt. It must be rebuilt.
That is more than just wishful thinking on the part of a former mayor. Some statistics. The port of South Louisiana is the largest in the United States. 52 million tons of cargo go out every year. Automobiles, corn, soybeans, and on and on. 17 million tons come in. Crude oil, chemicals, coal, steel. Half the United States relies on New Orleans, and a significant part of the rest of the world. So will the city be rebuilt? Undoubtedly. And will it continue to tempt fate? Yes, because it's still all about the river.
Most of the floodwaters that swamped the city of New Orleans poured in through this 300-foot breach in the levee along the 17th Street Canal. For several days now, the Army Corps of Engineers has been trying to fill it in, along one end bulldozing in rubble and gravel.
We're also coming in by air, and we're dropping very large sandbags to actually place in the breach.
Lieutenant General Carl Strock is commander of the Corps.
And what we're in the business now of doing is moving the water out of the city and trying to create the conditions for the recovery to begin.
It's a massive engineering project, the kind the Corps has been doing for centuries. Created as the construction agent for the Army, the Corps also maintains America's waterways, building dams, putting up floodgates, even rebuilding eroded beaches.
You might call us the water ministry of the United States.
After Hurricane Betsy washed over New Orleans in 1965, the Corps was brought in to reinforce the levee system around the city, most of which is below sea level, in a kind of bowl between Lake Pontchartrain and the Mississippi River. The decision was made to construct a system that could withstand a Category 3 hurricane.
What that equates to in terms of percentage is a 99.5% chance that we're going to be okay. And what's happened here is we've had that 0.5 chance.
General Strock says the force of Katrina was just too great.
We were simply confronted with an event of an intensity that exceeded the design of the structure.
But there may be a breach in the Corps' argument. Early analysis shows the worst of Katrina missed New Orleans, that the highest winds recorded in the city were about 100 miles an hour. That's not a Category 3 storm. It's a Category 2.
So the water generated by those winds, pushed by those winds, should not have been in excess of what was advertised to be the capability of the levee system.
Meteorologist Brian Norcross, a hurricane consultant for CBS News, says if the levees were built to withstand a Category 3, they should have held against Katrina.
I think that we're going to find it was a Category 2 hurricane in New Orleans, and there was a levee failure as opposed to the levees being topped and the storm exceeding their capability.
Was there a failure in the maintenance of the levees, or even in the engineering? The Corps says no, but it faces a lot of questions.
I'm sure they'll face some criticism now because of what didn't get done in New Orleans and what should have gotten done. But that's easy to say. Hindsight is 20/20.
Richard Weigel, a professor of civil engineering at Drexel University, spent 12 years in the Army Corps of Engineers.
This is maybe a wake-up call, is that we need to take care of these facilities, whether they be levees or highways or bridges.
As the Corps' engineers try to dry out an entire city, a job that could take months, New Orleans must ask itself whether it needs to build bigger levees. What would a Category 5 hurricane have done to this city?
From an engineering perspective, it is feasible to protect from that level, but the question is, at what cost?
New Orleans took the risk once. It will be paying the price for years to come.
All right. Have y'all had something to eat? How you doing this morning?
Hurricane Katrina did two things to people along the Mississippi coast. She tore down the structures they built. She toughened their spirit. Everyone here at this church Saturday lost everything. These hot meals, their only source of food. Faces tell the story. They're battered but not beaten. It's almost impossible to grasp the scale of destruction, even for people here. In Biloxi, Mississippi's coastal playground, mile after mile of twisted metal, block after block of battered houses, and everywhere, people's lives wrenched upside down.
I looked death in the eye.
Ida Punzo lived on the top floor of this once stately 130-year-old mansion.
It was absolutely breathtaking.
It had weathered countless hurricanes sweeping off the Gulf of Mexico, but the old columned house succumbed to Katrina. As the 35-foot storm surge pounded the ceiling below, Punzo and three friends huddled in the back of the third floor.
I knew we were going to drown. I knew, there was no doubt. But I wasn't going to give the faith up. I had the faith. I said a lot of Hail Marys, a lot of Our Fathers.
She thanks God she's alive, but never expected to be living like this.
I'm having to sleep wherever I can find a place to sleep, beg for food, beg for water. Oh. But every time I do it, it makes me a little bit stronger.
In this city of 55,000, there are as many stories of surviving or fleeing Katrina.
Oh, there goes the house! The house is blowing away!
Her strong storm bands lashed and flooded Biloxi for more than 10 hours.
That house over there was covered up with water.
Casey Williams works on the water. For 16 years, a cook on oil rigs in the Gulf.
In my water survival classes, they taught us this stuff, that if you take your pants legs and tie them together, you can make a floating device out of it. So I floated all the way over there to the side of that house over there.
He survived on a neighbor's roof. His uncle, cousin, and next-door neighbor drowned in the storm. With bodies still being recovered, people here call this a test. They're determined their will won't crumble like their buildings did. Mary Rose has no house, no insurance, and no idea what to do.
It is what it is. I didn't even shed a tear. What's crying gonna do? I need to stay strong.
And show the world, she says, what they're made of here. Part grit, part graciousness, a lot of faith. They need it all. A week after the hurricane, they still have to wait in endless, hot lines for gasoline. They wait for water, wait for food.
Everybody's not doing like they're doing in New Orleans, and there's not so much happening like it is over there.
But even here, the combination of thirst, hunger, heat, and lines can be combustible.
It's very frustrating. I can understand why they looting. I can understand why they're taking everything they can get their hands on, because ain't nobody trying to help them.
The most frustrating wait of all, for federal aid to arrive. It started trickling in only at the end of the week. Friday, President Bush promised Biloxi more help is on the way.
The tasks are enormous, and it's going to take a while.
Too little, too late is the complaint most often heard about help from FEMA and the National Guard. Democratic Congressman Gene Taylor.
I keep saying the Mississippi Guard is in Iraq, and the ones who have been in Iraq left their equipment behind.
Biloxi hasn't had a crisis like this since Hurricane Camille in 1969. That Category 5 hurricane mauled the Mississippi coast, killing more than 250 people. Since then, Biloxi not only has rebuilt, it's had a complete makeover to a mini Las Vegas by the sea with glitzy casinos bringing thousands of jobs.
Blackjack.
And millions of tourists.
Hi, welcome to Biloxi.
Pumping millions of dollars into the city and state. All of it now gone.
We was on a roll, I'll tell you. We had a lot of things going for us here in Biloxi.
A.J. Holloway is the 4-term mayor of Biloxi.
A minimum of 85% of our tax base has been destroyed.
Camille turned many people in this gambling mecca into gamblers themselves, betting if they could make it through Camille, they could make it through anything.
You've lived here your whole life.
All my life.
You lived through Camille.
I lived through Camille. Camille was a yo-yo to this.
Katrina almost drowned Patricia Rowell and her family.
My mother didn't get but 18 inches in Camille. So we thought, oh, well, we'll be all right. But when the water come up to here, and I knew Camille was done long gone, this was a different thing.
It seems now too many people thought they could ride it out, come hell or high water, until Katrina brought both.
The difference between the Asian tsunami and Hurricane Katrina began the instant the tsunami came ashore. The tsunami was not predicted or plotted days in advance like the hurricane.
Get inside, come on, guys.
It came without warning on a sedate Sunday morning over the Christmas holiday weekend. And yet, the response took hours, not days. Local officials in Phuket, joined by hundreds of volunteers, set up a clearinghouse for information at City Hall. Within 36 hours, there were lists of the dead and missing, pictures of the unidentified, translators from a dozen or more countries ready to help foreign tourists. We traveled across the hardest hit area the third day after the tsunami. Roads were already cleared and basic services like electricity already coming back in this remote coastal region that is also a national park. Many of the bodies had already been found and removed, a major concern because of the possibility of disease. The major difference here is that the water left almost as fast as it hit, leaving behind mountains of mud and debris, but not the floodwaters that hamper rescuers in New Orleans. At this provincial capital, there was food, bottled water, clothes, and people ready to help. All the things that many in New Orleans were still without days after the hurricane. Within a day, the pictures went up, as they did in New York after 9/11, as they may well go up in the weeks ahead in New Orleans. Pictures of the missing, the last hope of those afraid their loved ones were swallowed up in the tragedy.
We are searching for 20 hours per day, sleeping almost nothing.
Thailand was offered aid by foreign countries, but said it had the situation in hand. Other areas, like the Indonesian cities and villages hit by the earthquake and then the tsunami, were desperate, and foreign help soon arrived. Among the most vital aid, helicopters from U.S. Navy ships already in Asia that sailed here immediately after the tsunami. No one will know how many lives were saved because the U.S. military, in this situation, acted so quickly. Asians watched and applauded U.S. help after the tsunami, which is why a lot of people here are wondering why it's taken the U.S. so long to respond to a similar tragedy not thousands of miles away, but within its own borders. There are other lessons to be learned from the Asian tsunami. It will take a lot longer to rebuild than many expect. Months after the tsunami, the rebuilding in Indonesia and Thailand is still just getting underway. It could take as many months for New Orleans to rebuild. Debris must be cleared. Power, sewer, water systems need to be repaired or rebuilt. The newly homeless of New Orleans may be homeless for months. The other lesson is about the wounds that won't heal. In Thailand, the funeral started within days as bodies were found and identified. As order is restored, as New Orleans digs out, this is the chapter yet to unfold, finding the dead and finally saying goodbye.
First, it was the people of the Gulf Coast who were battered by Katrina. Then, when they waited days for help, it was FEMA that took a pounding. The Federal Emergency Management Agency was created for just these kinds of national catastrophes. But as New Orleans sank deeper by the day, where were they?
Citizens of the United States expect their government to be there during times of disasters, and they were not there.
Jane Bullock worked for FEMA during the Clinton administration.
The job FEMA's done during this hurricane is abysmal. I'd give it a failing grade.
Some state and local officials have also been criticized for being slow to respond, but no agency has taken greater heat than FEMA.
Did you screw this up? No.
And its director, Michael Brown. Brown's credentials seemed conspicuously lacking. A lawyer, his previous job was running horse shows. His White House resume claims he was an assistant city manager in Edmond, Oklahoma, with emergency services oversight. But Edmond officials say Brown was more like an intern with no supervisory authority.
People want to lash out at me, lash out at FEMA. I say that's fine. Just lash out, because my job is to continue to save lives. My job is to continue to try to rescue people, and I'm going to do that.
At first, President Bush, who appointed Brown, gave him a vote of confidence.
And Brownie, you're doing a heck of a job.
But by Friday, Brown himself was an evacuee.
Mike Brown has done everything he possibly could.
The head of Homeland Security, Michael Chertoff, to whom Brown reports, announced that Brown was being relieved of his hurricane duties. Not fired as FEMA director, just being sent back to Washington. But this storm is not likely to blow over.
Mike Brown is not the whole problem. The problem is we do not have anyone running this nation's response system who knows anything about disaster management, has had any real experience in it.
Here's how FEMA describes its mission: responding to, planning for, recovering from, and mitigating against disasters. Katrina showed how well the agency does at responding. But just last summer, this computer model showed how FEMA does planning. Hurricane Pam was only a simulated storm, but it packed 120-mile-an-hour winds.
Okay, the arrows represent the wind direction.
Professor Elizabeth English of Louisiana State University's Hurricane Center helped in this FEMA-directed emergency response exercise.
PAM simulated a large amount of water being swept from Lake Pontchartrain over the levee into the bowl of New Orleans.
The storm surge projection showed the levees would be overwhelmed.
The red represents the water coming in.
And the city would be swamped under 20 feet of water. For 5 days last summer, FEMA, the National Weather Service, and the Army Corps of Engineers all monitored PAM and forecast devastating consequences if a similar hurricane hit the city.
Unfortunately, so much of it is exactly what happened. We predicted that people would be trapped in their homes and sitting on roofs, and that there would be high floodwaters that were filled with a toxic mix of chemicals and sewage and dead animals and human casualties as well.
FEMA, in its own press release at the end of the PAM exercise, said, "We made great progress in our preparedness efforts. Over the next 60 days, we will polish the action plans." So what happened as Katrina approached? On the Saturday morning, 2 days before the hurricane struck, FEMA's watch commanders issued a warning.
We put a situation report out at 5:30 a.m. in big black type saying a catastrophic hurricane is headed straight dead center for New Orleans. And Brown and Chertoff and these people did nothing.
Leo Bosner has worked at FEMA since the agency was founded in 1979. He says Chertoff, who came to Homeland Security from the Attorney General's office, and Brown were out of their depth when the floodwaters rose.
We've never seen Mike Brown helping to run a disaster. He doesn't run disasters because he has no idea how to. He's a courtroom lawyer. If I get sued, I'd love to have him or Michael Chertoff defending me in court, but not running a disaster.
Bosner told Bob Orr the White House needs to appoint qualified professionals.
Not just give jobs to their friends who work the political campaign, and that's what it's sunk to, and now we're seeing the results.
But Congress may have helped weaken FEMA when it voted to take away FEMA's cabinet-level status and put it under the Department of Homeland Security. Suddenly, FEMA became just one more box in the bureaucracy. Former Louisiana Senator John Breaux.
By putting them under the jurisdiction of Homeland Security, where the focus has been, rightfully so, on terrorist attacks from a foreign enemy, I think we diluted their mission.
Now, nearly 2 weeks after Katrina made landfall, the list of disaster debris that needs to be cleaned up seems to keep getting longer. You can add to it FEMA's reputation.
This has to be not only a disaster, it has to be a lesson on how to prevent these things from happening in the future.
In New Orleans especially, people could always be who they wanted to be, until that hurricane hit and blew the facade off everybody.
Oh, there goes the house! The house is floating away!
No doubt, Katrina showed us who we really are. The question is, who are we, really?
Hey, I get my drop!
In the last 2 weeks, we've seen two extremes. The unmitigated stealing
Thank you so much.
and the unparalleled giving. The all for one and the me for me. So again, the question, who are we? When you cut to the core of human nature, what do you find there? Dr. Jekyll or Mr. Hyde?
Or to phrase the question in more philosophical terms, are people inherently altruistic, willing to help others even if it means hurting themselves, or egoistic, motivated solely by their own self-interest? I remember back in my Philosophy 101 class, I took the egoistic side. Give me any good deed and I could find some selfish reason behind it. People help others because it makes them feel good, gets them closer to heaven, gets them a tax break, whatever.
I started calling my neighborhood and got them up, and we're all out here setting up the cots. Couldn't be happier. Glad to do something, actually.
Perhaps you see what I mean.
To have a good community, you need to help so that you can be friends with everybody and have fun.
Not that it even matters, normally. In fact, I hadn't even thought about this whole debate until that damn storm reminded me. until I saw good people turn terrible before my very eyes.
Mr. Terrible is not the word, but find something else to take, just like Armageddon.
Yeah, we had a lot of heathens in there.
It's a living hell.
They don't care at all about their neighbor.
Of course, to play angel's advocate, history is full of other examples of what sure seems like altruism. The soldier who throws himself on a grenade to save his buddies. The fireman who walks up the steps of the World Trade Center.
Guys that have families, they're not going to see them anymore.
So, I ask one more time, who are we? For the final word, I went straight to the man upstairs, specifically the third floor at New York University.
Hi. Hi, how are you doing?
Hi.
I'm Steve Hartman.
I'm Dale Jameson.
Very nice to meet you.
Professor Dale Jameson is an expert in the evolution and nature of morality.
I'm in a bit of a dilemma.
He agreed to sit down with me and settle this, once and for all.
What are we?
Well, you know, like the poet said, we are those odd creatures that are somewhere between heaven and hell.
Guess I should have gone to see the poet instead.
And so you're not going to answer my question, I guess.
Well, that's the answer. That's the answer.
Right.
Apparently, I was right and I was wrong. Jameson says we can be both.
Can is the crucial word.
Right.
Nothing is determined. Nothing has to be. We can be altruistic. We can be vicious. The question is, what are the situations and the circumstances that are going to bring out the best in us? What are the circumstances that are going to bring out the worst in us?
Bottom line, humanity can only take so much. When deprived of our basic needs, our entire social structure falls by the wayside, along with the bodies of our weak.
The lesson of Hurricane Katrina is be better organized, to not let things get to that point.
In fact, Jameson says if government has any purpose, it's to save us from that side of ourselves.
U.S. Army Black Hawk.
To make sure the altruists arrive sometime before Japanese TV. And if our government can just do that for us, then no matter how ugly things get on the outside, we can still be proud of who we are on the inside.
The wind that brought such devastation to New Orleans last month was not unfamiliar or unexpected to the residents of that storied, long-suffering city. The Gulf of Mexico has delivered its relentless messages for centuries. But we forget that the news has not always been bad. The wind has, in times past, helped deliver to Louisiana's fragile delta the ingredients for America's only homegrown art form, jazz. Itself a hurricane of change, transcendence, and affirmation. From Africa, Europe, the Caribbean, and Latin America, men and women have for centuries sailed into the alluring, seductive, and steamy Crescent City, mixing in together in that great bowl of a town. In the near tropical heat, forced together by historical happenstance, people of every race, class, and culture simmered on this sub-sea level stove and created a music so stunning that it required the people who made it and heard it to see all of life anew. Listen carefully, and you'll hear rising from the swamps and bayous and dangerous waters the echoes of complex African polyrhythms, slave chants and spirituals, Latin and Caribbean dances, Viennese and Italian operas, Protestant hymns, military marches, and especially the blues, that simple but elastic form that permits all of us to acknowledge but also get past the woes that eventually visit everyone. First played on the brass instruments left behind by soldiers from the Civil War, jazz would in time help to heal the divisions left by that terrible conflict and offer a blueprint for further reconciliation everywhere its sound carried.
1, 2.
Not just a synthesis of cultures, not just an ensemble music that insisted that everyone be bound back to the whole. jazz simultaneously liberated and celebrated the personality, the unique individuality of every player. Each musician had to raise his or her own musical voice while also listening. It was, in the realest sense, democracy in action, and no one understood this better than New Orleans' favorite son, Louis Armstrong. It is now clear to me that he is to American music what Einstein was to physics, what Freud was to medicine, and what the Wright brothers are to travel. There are those in whose interest it is to keep us divided, to emphasize and distinguish that which makes us different: red state, blue state, black, white, rich, poor, north, south. But Louis Armstrong, the American music he helped promote, and now the struggling people of that wonderful city do not permit this. Even in the worst adversity, they and their musical legacy lead by example, with the heart. On the exhilarating notes issued from that magical horn of his, my thoughts return again to New Orleans. Though its people are now scattered, let us hope they will soon be able to return home, to be borne back to this fertile crescent, this cradle of our American civilization, on the uplifting sound of a distant trumpet. I mean, what could be more civilizing than the idea of a city where the child from the poorest section of town could go on to light up the world.
When all else in our lives is going wrong, when our children despise us, when we lose our jobs, when our health fails, when the stock market crashes, when war or disaster strike, we have our dogs and cats to comfort us and share their furry, loving goodness with us. Roughly 15 million American households have pets, and it's a wonder to me that not everyone has a pet. A dog or a cat is a four-footed rescue mission of love and understanding in a harsh, unforgiving world. Now, to be sure, the lives of millions of dogs and cats end each year by getting killed cruelly in pounds and on the streets. But right now, their situation is especially dire. Dogs and cats, those little angels on earth, have been drowned or are still alive but homeless by the thousands and maybe more in the Gulf South by the effects of Katrina. We see them on the TV news, scared, alone, starving, terrified, without friends or rescuers. They deserve far better. We can, as a society, show our love for the creatures who so often rescue us by now rescuing them. The federal government is throwing tens of billions at the problems of the hurricane, and of course, humans come first. But surely in the heart of a nation as great as ours, dogs and cats can be rescued too. As a taxpayer on a painful scale, I can promise you there's almost nowhere I would rather see my money go than to rescue man's best friends and sweet kitty cats. As a private citizen, I'm going to dig until it hurts to send money to rescue dogs and cats in Louisiana and Mississippi. Kind people are taking in dogs and cats stranded by the tragedy. I've sent money, and I would be happy to take in a sweet-natured sporting dog. Why don't we all take in those little dolls? How we behave towards those with no voices, only barks and meows, defines whether we are good or bad people. It's time to give back as a nation and as individuals. Man's best friend is calling with pitiful whimpers, and cats are meowing in terror. Let's answer them and return the gifts they so freely give us. Humans first, but dogs and cats a very close second.
Out of sight, out of mind describes the situation of poor people in America. Katrina blew the cover off a reality many Americans weren't aware of because we didn't see or hear much about it, or perhaps chose not to. Our cover story is reported now by correspondent Susan Spencer of 48 Hours.
We need help. Anybody, please, help us. Those heartbreaking scenes of Katrina's victims, those who hadn't the car or the money to escape the rising water, sent pangs of conscience rippling through the entire country.
People were ashamed of the sights that we saw on television.
From Democratic Senator Barack Obama on Capitol Hill.
They're so isolated that, in fact, we can safely ignore them, or at least we think we can.
To liberal and conservative poverty experts in Washington's think tanks.
It was the combination of the depth of their poverty and desperation.
I asked the question, why were they forgotten?
Even to Stanley Battle, the president of Coppin State University in Baltimore.
This is a very challenged neighborhood.
Smack dab in the middle of wrenching poverty, those images were a shock.
And I wondered, where are we going? What does this really mean? Is this some sort of a sign or a message? Is it a question of our humanity?
In today's consumer-driven, celebrity-obsessed culture, poverty is not chic. Although, according to the Census Bureau, it's a fact of life for some 37 million Americans. And indeed, the poverty rate has gone up every year for the past 4 years. Or has it? Both liberal and conservative experts like Doug Besh of the American Enterprise Institute warn, beware those numbers.
You're asking almost a metaphysical question.
There's no way to know how many people are in poverty?
There's no way to agree. If you ask 5 economists what poverty means, you'll get 6 opinions.
But few dispute that the problem is persistent, that the poor are disproportionately African American, or that in Louisiana and Mississippi, the situation, even in normal times, is a crisis, as it is in big cities throughout the country.
Many Americans live on the outskirts of hope.
And yet, it's been 40 years since poverty topped the political agenda.
And this administration today, here and now, declares unconditional war on poverty in America.
The weapons in Lyndon Johnson's war on poverty included food stamps, Medicaid, Head Start, job training, and income supports. And almost everyone agreed that those programs were a huge help. Almost everyone.
My friends, some years ago, the federal government declared war on poverty, and poverty won.
I said I thought Ronald Reagan was wrong.
Besheroff says that for one thing, poverty among the elderly has gone down dramatically.
The degree of material hardship in this country is much less than it was 10 years ago.
So the Great Society programs must have worked.
Oh, sure. There's no question that if you put enough money to a problem, people's earnings at least go up.
So is the answer then to the entrenched poverty that we still have an expansion of those programs?
Oh, I hope not.
Why not?
Because those programs are the kinds of programs that created the people we saw in the images in New Orleans. Those programs locked people into place.
If you walk into any inner city around the country and you ask people, what can we do to help people rise out of poverty? They'll tell you, folks got to take responsibility for their own actions, but the government's also got to provide some basic help.
I'd just like to say in response to a couple of comments here that...
On Capitol Hill, the prevailing conservative view is that big government programs have perpetuated the problem by creating dependency. House Whip Roy Blunt.
The government cannot accept all responsibility for everybody for a long period of time. You're going to wind up with multi-generations that have no contact with the kind of America that most Americans know about, the one where you find a job, you go to that job every day, you have a family with some relative stability.
It's not the failure of the programs.
In fact, poverty would be even worse without them, says Sheldon Danziger of the University of Michigan's Population Studies Center. He blames instead lack of educational opportunities and a minimum wage that hasn't been raised since 1997.
There are millions of hardworking poor who are, as the soundbite goes, working hard and playing by the rules, but still ending up with less than $19,000 a year.
For a family of 4, that's below the poverty line.
We have not really made fighting poverty in America a national priority since probably the early 1980s.
And the reason for that is?
I think we lost faith in government both from the problems in Vietnam and the perspective that we were spending a lot of money and poverty wasn't falling.
As all of us saw on television, there's also some deep, persistent poverty in this region as well.
Now, in Katrina's aftermath, it's clear the government will spend billions in immediate aid to the poor.
We have a duty to confront this poverty with bold action.
But in a country drowning in red ink, bold action to deal with poverty as a national problem isn't likely.
I don't see this as the opportunity to pass a new, big, totally government-oriented initiative to help fight poverty.
I hear a little lip service, but not very much beyond that.
Bob Greenstein of the Center for Budget and Policy Priorities worries that once the waters ebb, it will be business as usual on Capitol Hill. That means scaling back benefits and cutting more taxes.
But what I'm hearing is the well-connected, well-financed, heavy-hitter lobbyists taking items off of their long wish lists for like a new round of corporate tax cuts. But on the poverty front, I'm not hearing beyond vague philosophical expressions of concern.
But despite all the partisan bickering, the studies, and the programs, no one has a sure answer. One conservative will be looking for clues among Katrina's own victims, forced out of an inner city that he says helped keep them poor.
If those neighborhoods are as they were described, if the lack of jobs is as it was described, if the New Orleans schools were as abominable as people say, this could be one small silver lining to an otherwise large catastrophe.
That's a remarkable thing to say.
Well, I think it's a statement about how terrible some places are to live in America.
That's a heck of a way to get a trip and to be relocated because of a disaster.
They wouldn't give us water.
And still reeling from those images of despair, University President Battle finds it hard to find any silver lining in Katrina unless it were to become a national wake-up call.
I would hate to see us ignore a lesson. I'm not going to certainly quote biblical scripture, but something happened for a reason. If that wasn't Revelations, I don't know what is.
I think 20 years from now, we may look back either positively or with a lot of regret and say, you know, we had this moment. You could have a broader political conversation. The nation was in shock over the hurricane. Did we take advantage of it? It's a test for the whole nation.
New Orleans' Mayor Ray Nagin could have been speaking for all of us.
I'm tired of hearing these helicopters. I want to hear some jazz.
No one would argue with that. New Orleans and the surrounding Gulf Coast has been soaking in sadness for 3 long weeks. But starting tomorrow, hundreds of thousands of business owners will be allowed back in, and some residents may soon follow. Every day, the city is inching closer to making things a little better, one broom at a time. Take Arlie Cueste, who runs the Mojo Cafe in the French Quarter.
It's going to take a long time. It's not going to be New Orleans for a while.
She's cleaning up, getting ready to open up for real next week. Her restaurant, her home, her family are all okay, but her head isn't.
I feel kind of guilty about that, but a lot of people got a lot worse things happen to them, so.
There is a lot of guilt to go around, not the least of which is being suffered by the president. He's already made 4 trips to the region. He's planning another one this week. He strode across one of New Orleans' most famous squares to make a host of rebuilding promises that some in Congress are now wondering just how to pay for.
All who question the future of the Crescent City need to know there is no way to imagine America without New Orleans, and this great city will rise again.
But to think of it rising virtually street by street or family by family is nearly impossible to comprehend. We crept into this neighborhood by boat, where the water has gone down, much like it has all over the city. But it could take 6 months to clean what's salvageable, and most of it isn't. It's estimated some 150,000 homes just in New Orleans will have to be demolished. That's like leveling an entire town. 22 tons of debris is what will be left behind. Mixed in with it are 163,000 cars, 93,000 boats. What to do with it all?
So that is a major task that we need by.
That's Chuck Brown's job, head of the Office of Environmental Services. Some of it, he says, may simply be dumped in the ocean.
It's just a major undertaking, but again, I think we're up to the challenge, there's no doubt.
You can tell the homes that have already been checked. They have bright orange or green graffiti spray painted near the front doors, marking where bodies have been found or cleared.
Nobody's giving up searching for the living, but most of what they're finding in neighborhoods like this, especially by now, are the dead. But just locating those bodies is the hard part. The crews that we saw today, they were knocking on doors, they were looking in windows, but none of the ones we saw were actually going inside.
This crew of National Guardsmen was searching homes where family members had thought that their loved ones might still be trapped.
Military!
No one answered on street after street. Coroners, like Dean Nugent, who are working with the National Guard, say it's starting to take its toll.
Some of them 18 years old, 19 years old. It's tough on some of them.
Those who aren't looking for the dead are cleaning up, and you might be surprised at just who is doing it.
Ready, center.
In hard-hit Washington Parish, those doing hard time are the ones being called upon. More than 100 inmates from this correctional institute are handing out food and water, repairing buildings, and clearing roads. At least 80% of them had family in New Orleans.
You don't get anything out of it, though,
No,
right?
I don't get nothing out of this. Nothing but a blessing from God, you know. That's it.
James Stein volunteered to help because his family lost everything. They were evacuated to Houston, and he hasn't heard from them since.
Does this help a little? Does it feel like you're doing something?
Yeah, because I feel as though if I'm helping here, somebody out, you know, over there helping them, you know. Hopefully, you know.
Hopefully. It's a word thrown around a lot these days along the Gulf Coast, but in all sincerity. Arlie Quested decided to serve spaghetti and meatballs this weekend at that restaurant of hers, even though there's no power and very few customers, so far. The way she sees it, she's got to start somewhere, and that somewhere is right where she left off.
It will happen. It's just going to take a lot of work. A lot of work.
Nervous laughter in a place where it's surprising there's laughter at all.
This is the beginning of a good thing.
The aftermath of Hurricane Rita is only just now starting to reveal itself. It's too vast to be covered by just one correspondent, which is why correspondents John Roberts, Harry Smith, and Lee Cowan are sharing this morning's cover story. We begin with John Roberts in Port Arthur, Texas.
For a time, Hurricane Rita was looking like Katrina's evil twin. Instead, it turned out to be a little sister, one whose fury was more of a tantrum than a terror. Not that it didn't have its debilitating effects, though, on both property and psyche. Rick Fox is the police chief of tiny Vinton, Louisiana, right in the bullseye of Rita.
We were standing out in front of the police department and we saw a glow, and the next thing you see is flame shooting probably 75 to 100 feet in the air from this residence. As you can see, it's completely gone.
Between the fires, the downed trees, and other wind-whipped damage, Rita left Vinton a miserable mess. How will Fox remember this storm?
Rita got the best of us.
You didn't have to tell that to Mary Beth Romery. We found her out looking for one of the family dogs. Riding out a hurricane, she told us, was something she'd rather not repeat.
I wouldn't do it again. I would leave next time. Because it would shake our entire house. And it was very scary.
Miles inland from where the hurricane's eye came ashore, the stories and the damage are about the wind. But closer to the Gulf Coast, in Back Bay towns, it's all about the water. Port Arthur, a town of some 58,000 people, was left mostly submerged by Rita. Sure, they've seen it before. This town floods a lot. But this time, the whole country is going to hear about it. This is where the local impact of Hurricane Rita could have a national effect. There are a number of oil refineries in the Port Arthur area, which, as you can clearly see, are now underwater. These facilities are designed to quickly recover from flooding. But with this much water, 5 feet deep in some places, it could affect their ability to get gasoline to market. For a town built on oil, Rita is just another part of the boom and bust cycle it's come to live with. The refineries stop, the refineries start. The water comes up, the water goes down, and life goes on.
I'm Harry Smith in Lake Charles, Louisiana. It could have been worse. That's the refrain we heard over and over again here. Chief of Police Don Dixon says they took a punch, but not a killing.
Our main mission right now is to go through all the neighborhoods and only look at houses that look like they have some type of catastrophic damage where somebody injured might be inside.
Trees are down, streets are flooded, and in some places, houses are underwater. Brent McManus evacuated with his wife and 2 kids on Thursday. He came back to Lake Charles to find the lake had taken over his home.
Have you called your wife yet?
No, sir.
What are you going to tell her when you talk to her?
Well, she thought that we were going to lose everything, like the house being blown down. And I'm going to tell her she was halfway right, I guess. We've had flood damage. So it might have been best we lost everything, but I don't know. It's going to be tough.
Katrina may have set the standard for misery, but in Lake Charles, Rita seemed to be setting a new standard for longevity. Just when things were calming down, she blew back up again. More than 12 hours after the hurricane came ashore, the weather was fierce, nasty, dangerous. Lake Charles is a mess, but folks here, by and large, heeded the warnings to evacuate. Those who stayed behind, like the chief of police, were a little nervous.
It was dicey. It was dicey. And to sit there and being frustrated, knowing there's not a thing you could do, and knowing that your city's being torn up.
Rita was a big storm, but our now keen awareness, honed by the devastation of Katrina, makes this all look somehow minor. With power out and phones out and a huge cleanup that's just beginning, it will only be minor to we who are passing through.
This is Lee Cowan in Jasper, Texas. Think of the enormity of it all. One of the largest peacetime evacuations in U.S. history. And it succeeded, however painfully, in getting millions out of Rita's way. But not everyone. We came upon some of the unfortunate ones who made that decision to stay.
This is just one of a host of fires that broke out overnight. Every time the wind changes direction, so do the flames. And you can see the embers flying around in the sky.
And inside that inferno in Galveston, turned out, was a young woman. She's now suffering 2nd and 3rd degree burns. An ugly offering of how ruthless Rita could be. Even those who did evacuate seemed to suffer from trying. Just ask Todd Hunter. He's the police chief of Jasper, Texas, where thousands thought that they could seek refuge.
So many people were evacuating the Beaumont, Port Arthur, Chambers County area. When they got to Jasper, they were looking for fuel. We ran out of fuel, and we were forced with having to shelter those individuals.
The problem? Rita was still packing a Category 1 wallop when it blew through the pine forests of East Texas, an area more used to tornadoes than hurricanes. Doris Victorian simply couldn't understand it.
And I was so afraid. So we ended up coming here, but we should have went further because this is terrible.
Carol Morgan thought that she had it figured out too, until her roof blew off.
I didn't get afraid for myself. I did want my two grandbabies out.
She gathered those 2 grandbabies along with 6 other people and crammed them into this walk-in closet.
This was our escape hatch. What's left of it?
It was the only thing between her and the storm for several hours. When it finally calmed down enough, she ran to her church, where she couldn't wait to fix dinner last night.
They're going to celebrate being alive and unhurt.
There are a lot of people doing that this morning. It's the first Sunday of fall, 1 week closer to the end of the hurricane season.
As Rita roared ashore, the Gulf's oil industry, bracing for a knockout punch, seems to have caught just a glancing blow.
A small shift in the hurricane saved a lot of refineries.
Well, certainly it didn't come right up Broadway, so to speak.
John Kingston, the chief oil analyst for Platts, an energy research firm, says Rita did little damage to the Houston area, home to 9 major refineries.
But the areas that a little bit to the east is not an insignificant refining center.
The Texas-Louisiana border, however, and towns like Port Arthur took the worst of Rita.
Signals out of the refineries are pretty good. The one refinery that's really checked in is from Valero.
Valero Energy's refinery in Port Arthur, seen here just before the storm struck, was hit hard. Valero reports significant damage to 2 cooling towers and a flare stack. And the company says it could take 2 weeks to a month to restart.
Yes, it wasn't a disaster, but there is an impact on this on an already very tight gasoline market.
Last week, OPEC offered to put an extra 2 million barrels of oil on that market, its entire spare capacity. The president of OPEC, Kuwait's oil minister, said,
"And I hope this will affect the prices positive."
But it had little impact in the oil trading pits, where all eyes were on the weather.
This is not a problem OPEC can fix?
I don't think it's a problem OPEC can fix.
Energy trader Eric Bowling says the problem isn't a shortage of oil, it's a shortage of refining capacity in the U.S.
You can put all the barrels of oil you want in the market. If you're incapable of refining it into usable products, prices are still going to go higher.
20 refineries along the coast evacuated their workers as Rita approached.
Okay, y'all be careful.
It's my understanding that those refineries will probably be back online within 3 to 4 days. You just can't flip a switch and start them.
Dan Bournet, who heads Louisiana's Chemical Association, says when demand is this strong, we pay for those delays.
You know, every time we take a refinery down for even 3 to 4 days, that is going to have some impact.
Add that to Katrina's impact. John Kingston says 4 Gulf Coast refineries remain shut.
And they're not coming back for a while.
A while is how long?
I'd say probably you'll maybe start to see some coming back in December or so.
That long?
That long, yes.
The industry had its hands full just recovering from Katrina, says oil analyst Phil Flynn of Aileron Trading.
So the more damage you pile on, the further back goes the recovery process, and the longer that goes, you know, the longer high prices stay around.
Katrina and Rita helped introduce us to $3 a gallon gasoline. As the storm winds die down, the price may fall a bit too. But this problem won't blow over when the hurricane season ends. The oil fields and refineries may have dodged a bullet, but we'll have to bite the bullet and keep paying up at the pump.
These are among the most heartbreaking reminders of Katrina's devastation. The faces of some of the more than 4,000 children who became separated from their families either in the storm or during evacuation.
It's unprecedented. The sheer scale of this, the numbers of people we're looking for and the time frame in which we're looking for them is something we've never dealt with before.
Ernie Allen runs the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children.
We normally work cases in which children are taken as a part of a criminal activity. This little person was a newborn in a hospital in New Orleans.
Now he has taken on the task of finding these children.
Here's a child in a shelter by himself, and you can see the description, unknown boy.
Let me get a physical description of him. Franklin is the middle name.
Hundreds of volunteers.
When was the last time you had any contact with them?
Many of them retired law enforcement officials are searching for evacuated children who by now are spread out in shelters all over the country.
What's been the hardest part for you?
Not being able to find all of them in a day. This is old-fashioned gumshoe detective work. And the exciting thing about it is there's a scoreboard. You know, you get to measure your impact in terms of real human lives, and you get to do it on a daily basis. There's nothing better than that.
The score so far, more than 1,200 children returned to their families, sometimes in dramatic fashion. Little Arnold Learson was sitting glumly at a Tennessee TV station when his father suddenly walked into the studio.
Dad, are you up for hoops tonight?
I'm up for whatever.
And of the 165 faces of lost children shown on CBS News programs to date, 127 of them are now reconnected with their families.
I am not having too much luck.
But investigators at the Center for Missing Children fear that the latest hurricane, Rita, will not only add to the list of the missing, but complicate the current searches as well.
Now the evacuees from Houston and across Texas are on the move again.
Still, there is hopeful news. While the official number of children reported as still missing is staggering, nearly 3,000, in fact, the actual number of children truly lost is probably much, much lower.
We're dealing less with traditional missing children and more with fractured families. Children who are with one parent, but the other parent doesn't know where they are or if they're even alive, or children who are with a grandparent. Many of these children are fine and are being well cared for.
But there are also children, says Alan, with the wrong parent.
Do you have any idea how many non-custodial parents would take advantage of this to take a child they don't really have a legal right to?
No.
But you know that that's the case?
Well, we've had a few, and we suspect that there's some more.
Well, you know he's been found. You just don't know where he is now. Is that correct?
These seasoned investigators who have seen it all say they're giving it their all for as long as it takes.
Our commitment to these families is that we will continue this work. We will not close a case, close a single file, until every child is found or until we know with certainty what happened to the children and their families.
You have a date of birth
Does
or
she have
anything like that?
piercings? Let me get a physical description of him. When is the best time to call you back if we have some information?
Oh, you fat thing. Hey, boy. Hey.
It happened this week. A beloved New Orleans icon is back on the rails at last. Streetcars are rolling on the St. Charles Street line once more. 2 years and 2 months after Hurricane Katrina flooded the line. An official ceremony greeted the first car yesterday afternoon. And for a few hours after that, folks were allowed to ride for free. Regular service, have your fare ready, resumes this morning. The St. Charles route is one of just 3 lines to survive in a city that once was served by a wide network of streetcars, including the one named Desire. Blanche Dubois used to ride in the movie and play by Tennessee Williams.
They told me to take a streetcar named Desire.
Nothing quite so dramatic yesterday. Just the familiar and reassuring sights and sounds of a day gone by. Enjoying a brand new day.
It was the day the unthinkable happened. An American city was drowning. Streets became rivers. Rooftops became life rafts. Whole lives washed away before our eyes. But incredibly, in New Orleans today, there is celebration.
We're going to ask all the people here to grab a pencil and write your own message. Jot your thoughts and your prayers and your best wishes to these families.
A celebration of survival. There are tales of hope, tales of despair, but mainly this is the story of a work in progress.
Hi, how are you? Good. I came to tell you what you're going to eat today.
At Dookie Chase's restaurant, 87-year-old Leah Chase is back in business, dishing out down-home cooking and hospitality, as she has for more than 65 years.
6 men, no ladies. Where y'all left those women? I'm lucky. We lost people. And if we're still here, that means we got to work. We have to work. And I will do the work I have to do.
These used to be the steps to someone's home, but now it's a vacant lot. That's how it is in New Orleans 5 years later. There is progress, but it's house by house, block by block.
My mother, she got a call from somebody, one of her friends, and they said, "Where's your daughter?" And she said, "My daughter left." She said, "Oh, well, because I see our house floating down the streets."
Deirdre Taylor Ordone had just moved her family into a new home in the lower 9th Ward when the floodwaters swept it and everything they owned away.
I had just bought brand new furniture. I mean, my kids had just went shopping for school, and they was like, you know, "Can we take our clothes?" I said, "Girl, leave them clothes here. We'll be back in 3 days." You know, 3 days turned pretty much almost into 3 years.
Now she has another new home on the very same spot. A just completed architect-designed house built by actor Brad Pitt's Make It Right Foundation. Progress, but it's one of just 50 built so far. Before Katrina, there were thousands of owner-occupied homes in this neighborhood, along with grocery stores, schools, and a post office. All of that is gone.
New Orleans is this fabulous city right now where it's...
After Katrina's onslaught, artist Alex Beard moved himself and his family back to his native New York, worried about the city's health and the health of his 3-month-old son.
Locally, on the state level, and on the federal level, we were clearly abandoned. Right from the get-go, and everybody knew it.
Last year, Alex Beard came back and opened a new gallery in the heart of the French Quarter. Where government may have failed, he says, people have made a difference.
All of a sudden, nationally, we had a lightning rod where you no longer had to feel helpless. You could come and bang nails into a roof and see a difference, a positive difference.
Touchdown! We're good.
Just this past week, hundreds of volunteers poured into New Orleans to help Habitat for Humanity make that positive difference. Their goal on Katrina's 5th anniversary, to build 5 new homes in 5 days. Still, there are nearly 50,000 vacant houses on blocks across New Orleans.
Every home in this neighborhood was damaged or just outright destroyed when the water came through that levee wall on the morning of August 29th.
In fact, in the city's most battered neighborhoods, 5 years later, abandoned houses outnumber occupied homes almost everywhere you look. Rick Prose founded lower9.org to try to change that.
Our population return in the lower 9th Ward is now standing at about 20%.
His organization supplies free labor to homeowners, like Deborah Massey, who bought this abandoned home for $30,000, but didn't have enough saved to renovate it on her own.
They just charge you materials?
Just materials. Just had to buy the materials and some red beans and rice, maybe once or twice a week, and some hot dog and nachos, water, cold drink. I was like, okay.
I can do that.
Do this. Yes, I can do this. Thank you all so much.
The sun is gonna shine for you tomorrow.
Tales of hope, tales of despair,
But again, New Orleans, 5 years after Katrina, is a work in progress. 100,000 people who left after the storm haven't returned. But consider this, New Orleans is now the second fastest growing city in the United States. And those who've persevered, folks like Leah Chase, count their blessings.
I am a blessed woman. I had so much help. I enjoy seeing the changes we're looking at now. And you know, some people, they don't like change, but change is good.
A new perspective since the storm and a willingness to embrace whatever changes life has in store.
Now, bad things happen to us here. You know, look at this last summer with the oil spill. But it's much less of a sense of we can't get over it, and much more of a sense of life is full of hard things, and we will rise to the occasion.
As if we needed reminding, even after 10 years, how terrible Katrina really was, and what a colossal fiasco.
We are gonna die out here if they do not see somebody out here right now.
The horror show at the Superdome. Close to 25,000 people were trapped there for days in the heat and stink.
We need to feed our babies. We need to give our babies some water.
Somebody rescue us.
Thousands more baked on overpasses along the interstate.
This man jumped to his death because he just couldn't take it no more.
More than 1,800 people died across the Gulf Coast. How could this be happening in the United States of America? Who seemed more out of touch, President Bush or FEMA Director Mike Brown?
And Brownie, you're doing a heck of a job.
New Orleans Mayor Ray Nagin let loose on a radio broadcast.
Now get off your asses and let's do something, and let's fix the biggest damn crisis in the history of this country.
80% of New Orleans was flooded. Billions and billions of gallons of water swept over the city. Not so much because of the storm itself, but because the levees gave way. The flood walls broke.
Being there in those first months, it felt like, am I witnessing the death of a great American city?
Gary Rivlin covered Katrina for the New York Times. His new book, Katrina After the Flood, has just been published by CBS-owned Simon & Schuster.
People talk about Katrina being an equal opportunity storm. Didn't make a difference if you were black or white, rich or poor, but it wasn't exactly an equal storm. If you were a black homeowner, you were more than 3 times more likely to have lost your home in the flooding than if you were a white homeowner. And just like it wasn't an equal opportunity storm, it has not been an equal opportunity recovery.
This was one of the first things I saw when I came into Lakeview for the first time, and there was a mound 10 stories high of debris. And I just remember pulling to the side, stunned, and I just began to weep.
Connie Udo's house, a few blocks away, looked like this after Katrina. When the water finally drained away, what had been her middle-class, overwhelmingly white neighborhood looked like this.
We were fortunate because my home is triplex. Because we lived on the 2nd and 3rd floor, we didn't lose everything.
After moving 6 times, Udo, her husband, and 2 children dared to go home. In January 2006, 4 months after the storm.
It was a very sad place to be. As long as I was in my house, I was okay. When I walked outside, I would feel myself just kind of slide. And got to the point where I told my husband, I don't think I can do this. And so he said, you know, I think you have to find a purpose.
A few months later, the former tennis teacher had become a combination Angie's List and Mr. Clean, a whirlwind running the St. Paul's Homecoming Center. Her job? Connecting people to resources, marshaling volunteers to get her Lakeview neighbors back in their houses.
I realized we were in a fight for our life, to save our neighborhood, to save our city.
How did you go about this assault on
Yeah.
the storm.
Do not wait for the government. That became our motto. People would say, well, I'm going to wait for this. I'm going to wait for the government's going to do this, right? I was like, no, I don't think so. The government didn't even show up when we were stranded at the Dome for 5 days. Why do you think they're going to show up to help gut our schools and churches and businesses? And why do you think that? We need to do this. This was one of our success stories, actually.
And they did, Connie Udo's organization and others. There are reminders of Katrina. The high water line is immortalized at Starbucks. But Lakeview is back. A supermarket opened in 2010. The St. Paul's Homecoming Center has moved on. In New Orleans, happy or sad, you dance to the music. And yesterday, on the actual anniversary of Katrina, people danced in the lower Ninth Ward, where the most damage was done. This is what it looks like, still. Almost entirely African American before the storm, only 37% of its pre-Katrina residents have returned. Brad Pitt's Make It Right and other charities have built hundreds of homes, but thousands were destroyed. The closest thing to a grocery store opened last year. More on that later.
And this was the front door.
Someone else's roof was on top of Betty Bell's house when the retired social worker finally was allowed back for a look a month after Katrina. The city demolished it.
You know, I just try to be strong and not let it really affect me too much, because I don't want to run my blood sugar up.
Her insurance settlement, nowhere nearly enough to rebuild. The bank took most of it to pay off her mortgage anyway.
This was the bathroom.
Construction is about to start on Betty Bell's lot, but it's taken 10 years of fighting and the intervention of a local advocacy group to get her barely enough money for a house 1/3 the size of her old one.
It's not what I had, but, you know, at least I'm getting something. And it took a long time to get to this point.
For Bell, the problem was Road Home, Louisiana's nearly $10 billion federally funded program intended to bridge the gap, to provide homeowners enough money to rebuild. For many, many Katrina victims, it ended up a bureaucratic nightmare, a symbol of incompetence. But for residents of African American neighborhoods, such as the lower Ninth Ward, it was a symbol of something else: discrimination. Road Home based its payment formula on the value of a property before Katrina. In New Orleans, historically, homes in African American neighborhoods have been valued significantly lower than similar homes in white neighborhoods. Never mind that construction costs are the same regardless.
It was just a fundamental flaw in the program. In fact, it's not just me saying that. A federal judge ended up concluding that the Road Home program did, in fact, discriminate against black homeowners.
It's not that they were not made aware that it was not a good policy. Myself and others personally appealed to the powers to be to not use that policy.
One of the city's most prominent African American leaders, Alden McDonald, heads Liberty Bank and Trust Company. After Katrina, his headquarters, his branches, and his own home were all devastated. But he managed to keep the bank open.
We're Louisiana made, Louisiana proud at Liberty Bank.
And has, in the past 10 years, built it into one of the largest minority-owned banks in the United States. But this speaks volumes. The Liberty Bank building in African-American New Orleans East, marooned, surrounded by what was a 1 million square foot mall before Katrina.
When I take a look at what happened and what didn't happen, you could see that the ability of money helped communities to rebuild faster and bigger. and to do things that perhaps the African American community with less wealth was not able to do.
We're ready. Nearly 10 years after Katrina, we're no longer recovering. We're not rebuilding. Now we're creating.
The current mayor, Mitch Landrieu, likes to talk about a new New Orleans. All you have to do is look around. The Superdome, rebuilt. A new state-of-the-art hospital. New schools. A new $14.5 billion flood protection system reduces, it doesn't eliminate, the risk of catastrophic flooding. The tourists have returned, but nearly 100,000 African American New Orleanians gone. The new New Orleans looks familiar, but may never quite be the Big Easy again.
Only in New Orleans.
New Orleans has its own flavor, and I think part of that flavor is the soul that really goes into it.
Chef John Besh knows something about the soul of New Orleans.
The food of New Orleans is the only indigenous urban cuisine left. You come to our city, you open up any menu, you know exactly where you're at.
How long for the fried oyster?
I was sitting there trying to count the number of restaurants like in my head. What number is this one?
So we have 10 here in New Orleans.
10.
Mm-hmm.
The Besh Restaurant Group employs over 1,000 people. Besh himself is a fixture on television and has written 4 cookbooks, including his latest, Besh Big Easy.
Everything that we do here should take us back to our childhood. So we have with every cookie plate comes the cookie batter.
Sick.
We met up with him at his newest venture, the just opened bakery and cafe, Willa Jean.
This is really special because I'd always hoped that I'd have one restaurant. I wanted to be a chef. I wanted to be a New Orleans chef.
The 47-year-old Besh could almost see New Orleans from Slidell, Louisiana, where he grew up as one of 6 kids of a stay-at-home mom and airline pilot father.
My father was paralyzed at a really young age, and I was 9 years old, and he was hit by a drunk driver, paralyzed for life. At that point, I started cooking breakfast for my siblings. And I wasn't the smart ones. We got smart ones, and I was just the dumb one that making breakfast and serving the kids. And so that kind of became my job. I loved to cook.
And he kept cooking, developing his own unique take on time-honored recipes.
Beautiful Gulf shrimp.
Love it.
I would always do riffs on my mom's shrimp Creole, and I would add a little something, or I'd add that, and I would make it my own. Need a little hot sauce. And then when I had a chance to finally stand out on my own, I wanted to honor some of those great dishes that I've had in the past. And so just trying to bring a little refinement to them, and that's pretty much all I do still today.
Oh, it smells so good.
Before his culinary career took off, Besh joined the Marines, where he served in Iraq during Operation Desert Storm.
That was a time that I got to mature a lot. And at a young age, learning how to deal with people that don't look like you, don't talk like you, that really helped me a lot in growing as a chef.
He returned home to start a family and work his way up the New Orleans food scene, eventually becoming the executive chef and owner of August Restaurant. Life was good, but something was missing.
I did fall into the trap of being that selfish chef, just focused on building this great place. It was Katrina that really brought me back to my roots of, no, we have to live now and really serve other people, and that's what it really comes down to.
This is an unprecedented moment for New Orleans. A catastrophe is on its way, and 500,000 people here are moving out.
When the storm hit, he shut his restaurant down and left with his family, only to return to a devastated city.
And then I get here and I see the fires and I see the smoke and I see the water, and you see people in such despair. And I just remember at this one point thinking, God has put me here for a reason. I have resources, I have a talent. What am I going to do to help?
What he could do was cook.
We just started cooking. We'd cook red beans and rice around the clock, and Either myself or some of my Marine friends would ride around just scooping and serving these red beans to people.
And when he wasn't cooking, he was reaching out.
So this neighborhood was just totally flooded, destroyed. We're talking about 6 to 8, I think 12 feet of water just down the street.
The Tremaine neighborhood was in bad shape, including the fabled fried chicken place, Willie Mae's Scotch House. It was in danger of closing forever. So Chef Besh set out to help save it.
Whoever was going to come and help out rebuilding Willie Mae's Scotch House, we were going to feed them for free. And so all these volunteers we would feed.
They were determined, and failure was not an option.
Carrie Stewart runs the family-owned Willie Mae's, which was founded by her great-grandmother.
I cried many a days in the storeroom. You know, if I just had a moment, I'd just go back there and I'll be like, whew. You know?
Easy. After the storm, these places became cornerstones that people in an act of defiance would come and eat out in order to show their resilience for defeating all this adversity.
In the 10 years since Katrina, Besh has not only grown his own empire, but he's continued his work in the community.
If we're going to sustain the culture, then we have to make sure that we invest in its people. So here I am, I've become pretty famous just from cooking New Orleans food, right? But we all have to share in that. We all have to have opportunities to participate in that.
So he started the John Besh Foundation, which gives loans and scholarships to local people, the only requirement being that they give back to New Orleans in turn.
So I think if nothing else, what's really come out of this whole, of the tragedy of the storm, is we started with a blank slate, and we haven't gotten everything right, and it won't be done tomorrow. And I think that if I can use food to shape a better tomorrow for New Orleans, then that's what I'm supposed to do.
This part of the lower 9th Ward was once a thriving neighborhood. There was a house right there, another there, and another there. But like the porch steps that now remain, the last 10 years have led nowhere.
It's been 10 years, and that's just too long.
But there is hope, and his name is Burnell Colton.
I'm just an average guy with above average dreams, and my dream was to make my neighborhood look like the rest of the city.
Burnell was the first to rebuild on his block, but about a year ago he did something braver still. Right in the center of this desolate landscape, he took an old apartment building, tore off the roof, and hung a new shingle, now open.
What's going on, sir?
This is the lower 9th Ward Market, the only business of any kind in the immediate neighborhood.
There was nothing in the entire area.
Not even his mother, Lily, thought it was a smart idea.
There wasn't even a good street light out there.
But Burnell felt like he had no choice.
The large box stores said they're not coming back because there's not enough people. And the people that want to come back say they're not coming back because there's no stores. What came first, the chicken or the egg? Somebody still have to do something.
How much does this cost you?
It cost me everything. It cost me my entire life savings.
Burnell had saved $80,000, mostly from a 10-year stint in the Army. He and his wife Keisha were hoping to retire on that money.
Hey, how you doing?
He may never make it back.
Real good.
But he still smiles like a rich man.
You could have went anywhere, but you came here.
In addition to the groceries, the market also serves as a gathering place. Kids come after school. Burnell's mom serves them snowball treats. This place has become the heartbeat of the neighborhood. And for that reason, Burnell says he has no regrets. In fact, he wants to add a laundromat, maybe even a skating rink. The guy has become a one-man planning board.
I'm gonna keep on going. I'm not gonna let nobody stop me.
Certainly, if hell and high water didn't, he's not gonna let a few weeds get in his way.
I'm gonna do it.